Alrighty, so first of all, I actually have no idea how am I going to watch these games because just like back in May, I am going to be going to Minnesota and I am going to go there to watch the Loons play against the Colorado Rapids. And because I'm traveling, yeah, it's kind of hard to basically keep track of these games. So I'm going to try my best in terms of doing so. This is why MLS 360 basically exists. I'm going to be once again rely on that very heavily in terms of watching some of these games. But nevertheless, let us actually get into these midweek action. We get 13 games that's going to be happening in the middle of the week, and because it's in the middle of the week, that means all these games has to be at nighttime. And there's going to be a lot of overlap, and we start off with the first one, which is Atlanta United versus FC Cincinnati. This is one of 6 games that starts at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific. So at least it's not as extreme as what we saw this weekend, where pretty much the first 8 games was at that time zone. But coming into this one, Atlanta 11-8-7, while Cincinnati 15-6-3. Atlanta has a 5-4-1 record over FC Cincinnati, and in the last 5 head-to-head match, it was a 2-2 draw. The last time both of these teams faced off against each other, then it was a 0-0 draw. Then Atlanta did win 2-1 against Cincinnati. Then Atlanta won 4-0 against Cincinnati, and then Cincinnati was able to draw 1-1 against Atlanta United. So there's been a lot of draws in this series, but it's been mostly dominated by Atlanta United, and it should be interesting because Atlanta, as we have seen in these 2 games, they have been firing on all cylinders. They look like the Atlanta that we saw earlier in the season that has kind of that old flash of Atlanta United being a free scoring kind of team and a fun team to watch. But it's not going to be hard when you get facing against the best team in the league, that is FC Cincinnati. I mean, this is a team that if you thought that they maybe had a wobble in the Leeds Cup, with them suffering an early exit in the knockout round, and it can damage their kind of thinking that they're gonna continue to finish the season strong and wrap up the supporter shield standing. Yeah. Then think again after what happened. They easily got that 3-0 win against NYCFC. But that being said, they do it. It is a midweek game, and again, for these teams that have to travel in the middle of the week, especially traveling across the other side of the country, it's not going to be easy. But the good news for Cincinnati is at least they don't have to do so, though. It's still a pretty big travel in terms of going from Cincinnati to Atlanta, and especially against a red hot Atlanta team that has been firing on all cylinder in the last 2 games. Then we get to the next one, which is Charlotte FC versus Orlando City. So Charlotte 7-8-9, while Orlando 12-7-6. Charlotte and Orlando have played 4 games, and both of them has won 2 games each. So this is kind of a rubber matchup in terms of who's gonna get the lead again in the all-time series. And in the last 4 head-to-head matchup, Charlotte did win 1-0 against Orlando City, but that was back in the U.S. Open Cup. Before that, it was a 2-1 win for Charlotte over Orlando, a 2-1 road win for Orlando over Charlotte, and a 2-1 home win against Charlotte FC. Now, keep in mind, Orlando does have one of the best record on the road this season. In fact, I think they're tied with Minnesota in terms of the most road win this season. So, this is a team that is known to do well on the road. And they're facing against a Charlotte team that, despite they got a massive win against LAFC last week, this team still struggle at Bank of America Stadium. So you're thinking that maybe Orlando can get themselves another win, but then again, you're also thinking that Orlando is trying to go on a 3-game winners run, which or winning streak, which has not happened this season. And it's kind of interesting to see that this Orlando City team has found some consistency at least in these last couple of games, and even during the Leeds Cup tournament, which that's got to be great news if you're an Orlando City fan, because inconsistency has been a problem, and we'll see whether that continue in this one against a Charlotte team that they're definitely going to fight and scrap their way in terms of contending for the playoffs. This could be very similar to last season, where Charlotte they just refuse to die. Like you thought that they were out of the playoff picture, and then they come back from the dead and can contend until the very last match week. Then we get the rematch of the Leeds Cup final between Inter Miami and Nashville. So I'm pretty sure everybody is tuning into this one, not only for Messi and his company, but also again the rematch of the Leeds Cup final. So again, Miami 6-3-14, while Nashville is 11-5-9, as Miami continue their role to try to go on a miraculous run to make it to the playoffs, whereas they're playing against the Nashville side that they definitely no doubt wants to bounce back after just pretty much had a no-show in that game against Atlanta United. All-time meeting 4-3-2 in favor of Nashville, but in the last five head-to-head matchup, of course, in that Leagues Cup final, it was a 1-1 draw, but Miami did win in the PK shootout. And then in the U.S. Open Cup earlier this season, Miami was able to win 2-1 against Nashville before Nashville did win 2-1 against Miami, and then Nashville won 5-1 against Miami before Miami did win 2-1 against Nashville SC. In fact, it's very rare that we have seen Miami able to get the win against Nashville in terms of league plays. I think they only have won once so far, and that was the 2-1 victory that they had against Nashville SC. But yeah, again, this is going to be interesting, and that obviously there's the question, who is going to be that first team that is going to knock down Inter Miami and knock down Lionel Messi and his company. And Nashville came really close to do so in the League Cup final. So we'll see whether they can do so again. Though again, one of the problems for Gary Smith this season is that they have not been good on the road, and especially after that 4-0 beatdown they have against Atlanta, it's gonna take a lot of inspiration to realize that, yeah, they need to just push that aside and just realize that now they're going to be playing against a team that they lost in that Leagues Cup final, and you better believe Nashville have not forgot about that final. They definitely want some revenge in this one, and that, yeah, we'll see whether they can do so against this Inter Miami team, which this is actually officially going to be the first league home game that Messi is going to be playing at Drive Pink Stadium. I mean, I know they play there a couple of times, but last game was actually the official first MLS game for Messi against the New York Red Bulls. Now we have him playing at home in the first league matches for Inter Miami in this one against Nashville. Speaking of the Red Bulls, they play against the New England Revolution. So I mean, there's definitely a couple of games I would say it could be a desperation derby. I mean, we're getting to this part of the season where there's some of these games that means a lot for both of these teams in terms of playoff races. And while New England are definitely comfortable in terms of where they're sitting in the playoff standings, yeah, things have definitely not gone well for a Bruce Arena team, or shall I say a Bruce Arena less team, because Bruce Arena is still taking an absent lead on the investigation that is going on with him after he makes some inappropriate remark. But that being said, they have a 12-7-5 record, while the Red Bulls 7-8-10. All-time meeting 40-21 and 33 in favor of New England. There's always tends to be a rivalry between both of these two teams, and some hatred when both of these teams play against each other. But in the last five head-to-head matchup, both of these teams did face in the League Cup. It was a 0-0 draw, but the Red Bulls were able to prevail on penalties. Before that, it was a 2-1 win that the Red Bulls had against New England, a 2-0 road win, or actually a 2-1 home win against New England again, and then a 1-0 home win for New England before New England did win 3-2 against the New York Red Bulls. So yeah, the Red Bulls has had some good history against New England, at least in the last five head-to-head matchup, besides that 3-2 loss that they suffered. But that was the year when New England broke the record for the most point in an MLS regular season. So yeah, I mean, this should be an interesting one. Again, I would say it's kind of a desperation derby because New England, things have definitely fall apart in these last couple of games, and you just really hope that off the field distraction and just so many injuries that they've been dealing with this team is not going to derail this team for a season that they thought that this was the year for them to make the push to go deep in the playoffs. Whereas for the Red Bulls, they're just trying to hope that this late season run will prevent them of having another playoff active streak comes to an end. I mean, last season we saw with the Seattle Sounders that active playoff streak was over. Feels like the Red Bulls could potentially head to that way if they do not have a good run in the latter part of the season. Then we go to the other New York team, that is NYCFC versus Montreal. So while the Red Bulls still has a chance in terms of their playoff hope, if they can of course figure out their attacking sorts, you can't say the same about their intercity rival NYCFC. It feels like this team maybe is heading toward a rebuilding or retool kind of season, and there's been a lot of Nick Cushing out kind of uh, um, kind of whisper in the NYCFC fan base, and it doesn't help the fact that they of course are looking to trying to quiet that slander, or at least Nick Cushing is trying to quiet that slander when they're facing against a Montreal team that is definitely confident coming into this one. Now, I will say this: Montreal has had their problems in terms of playing on the road, though. They did get their second road win against Toronto FC, and this is definitely a winnable road game for Montreal if they want to also improve their chances of making the playoffs. But Montreal coming into this game with an 11-2-12 record, while NYCFC have a 5-11-10 record. All-time meeting. Well, so far this is where it's not going to be favorite Montreal. NYCFC has dominated this series 11-5-2 in favor of Montreal, and the last five head-to-head kind of shows that. A 1-0 win that NYCFC had against Montreal before a 3-1 road win against Montreal. Then it was a 0-0 draw between both of these teams, a 4-1 home win against Montreal, and then NYCFC was able to win 1-0 against Montreal. In fact, it's been a while since Montreal has been able to get a win. And I think this game is also taking place at Yankee Stadium, which, this season, I know Yankee Stadium hasn't been as big of an advantage for NYCFC. They have draw points this season at Yankee Stadium, which is kind of a surprise considering that's always been a stadium that they have never dropped too many points because of not just the fact that Yankee Stadium is an intimidating place to play, but it's a place where, well, I could say it's an intimidating place to play because of the short field and just the bad, awful turf that is at Yankee Stadium. So, yeah, Montreal's gonna find that out, and we'll see whether they can deal with that, or will NYCFC get a much needed win to maybe cling off to their slimmer hope of potentially making the playoff this season. And for all those teams that are battling for those playoff position in the Eastern Conference, it has to suck the fact that, yeah, they're fighting for those positions, but really they're just hoping there's two spots that is open in the playoffs, because we know one of that spot is probably going to be belong to Inter Miami by the end of the season. And with that being said, we move on to the next one, and we move on to this match between Toronto versus the Philadelphia Union. So for the second week in a row, I want to congratulate the Union having a relatively easy game, because they're playing against a team that clearly is playing the string out and just playing for pride. Where TFC have a 3-10-13 record, while the Union has a 13-4-7 record. Though that being said, despite the fact that TFC is definitely playing for pride, those are sometimes usually the most dangerous team to face, because when you're faced against a team that has nothing to play for, you would expect you would get an easy win for them, but then, yeah, you can easily underestimate them, and they can play that spoiler role, which is another thing that maybe TFC is going to try to play for the rest of the season. But also, a lot of these players are definitely playing for their jobs next season too. All-time meeting 13-7-11 still in favor of TFC, and in the last four head-to-head, or in the last five head-to-head matchup, it was the Union winning 4-2 against TFC, a 4-0 win that the Union has against TFC, a 2-1 home win that TFC had against the Union, a 2-2 draw between both of these teams, and then the Union winning 3-0 against Toronto FC. So safe to say that the Union has definitely got the better of TFC of all but one matchup in the last five head-to-head matchup, and I don't expect this is going to be different. I think the Union should get an easy win in this one, and well, I don't think they're going to chase down Cincinnati for that supporter shield, standing in that top of the spot in the Eastern Conference, because Cincinnati is just so far ahead. I mean, barring just major collapse by Cincinnati, I think the Union most likely is going to finish second. But still, this is a good time for the Union and for Jim Curtin to use these games as a way to kind of get the confidence of the players that once playoff time does come, once they remain hot, they're definitely going to be chasing for some unfinished business, which is finishing what they failed to do last year, win the MLS Cup 2023. But that being said, moving on in the next match, we got Austin FC versus the Seattle Sounders. So this is another game you could say it's a desperation derby, and I think you could say that the team that's probably the most desperate to get a win has to be Los Verdes, because yeah, for Austin it's been bad the last couple of weeks, going back to even the Leeds Cup form. But 9-5-11 is Austin record. They're barely hanging on in terms of being above the red line right now. Whereas for Seattle, 10-7-9. Well, I say they're barely hanging on. I think Austin is currently in seventh place, but third through 10th is separated by just 5 points right now. I mean, it's a log jam right now in the Western Conference standings, and that it just feels like no team has been able to get consistency whatsoever this year in the West. But in terms of the all-time meeting, 2-2-1 in favor of Seattle. In terms of the last five head-to-head matchup, Austin actually did win the last matchup. That was the first time that they beat Seattle. They won 2-1 on the road against the Sounders. Before, it was 3-0 win that the Sounders had against Austin. Then it was a 1-1 draw between both of these teams, a 1-0 win that Seattle has against Austin, and then it was a 0-0 draw between both of these teams. Now, I will say that if there is a game that could potentially end in a 0-0 draw, this might be the one to do so because neither of these teams has looked very good on the attack, and at least in the last couple of weeks. I mean, for Austin, besides that one game that they had against St. Louis where they scored 3 goals, but don't let that game distract you. The fact that they were really getting completely blown out and only scored those goals during garbage time. They haven't been good at all on the attacking end, and the same goes for the Seattle Sounders. They are just kind of snake bitten in terms of putting the ball into the back end net for really the past month or two now, even before the Leeds Cup tournament. So again, something tells me this could, if there is a game that finished 0-0, this could potentially be the one. But then again, I say that many times, and I don't think there's been one time I predicted a game and it 0-0, and it actually ended 0-0. And if there's also one thing you know about midweek action this season, expect the unexpected. Expect some crazy things that has happened. That's what Don Gabber wants. I mean, that they want he wants to make sure that you actually still pay attention to these midweek games because so far some of the craziest matches and some of the most high scoring matches has come in the middle of the week. So don't be surprised if this game ends up to be a 4-3 thriller. Even though nobody expected that is the case. But moving on, we got the Chicago Fire versus the Vancouver Whitecaps. So for Chicago, again, the narrative seems like it started to turn again with the way that this is usually part of the time where Chicago are collapsing, and they have already lost 2 in a row. Whereas they face against a Whitecaps team that they're in that murderous row of a 7-game road trip right now, and that I hate to say that this 7-game road trip is kind of a do or die for the Whitecaps, but it kind of is with the way that if they do not come out of the 7-game road trip still above the red line or even close to being above the red line, they're probably done this season. But the good news for the Whitecaps, they got off to a good start in this murderous road trip. They got a win against the Timbers to improve the record to 9-7-8, while the Fire had the most Chicago Fire away day against the Galaxy to drop their record to 8-8-9. This, of course, is the first of, I believe, 3 games? No, 4 games. That's going to start at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific. I'm looking at there because that's where I wrote the other notes for the other board. But in terms of the all-time meetings, 6-3-3 in favor of the Whitecaps, and in the last 5 head-to-head matchup, it was a 3-1 road win that Chicago has against Vancouver. Then Vancouver was able to win 2-0 on the road against Chicago. It was a 1-1 draw between both of these teams, and then the Whitecaps had a 3-2 win against the Fire before the Fire did win 4-0 against the Vancouver Whitecaps. So it's tough to tell in terms of when you look at the head-to-head matchup. But one thing for sure is that for the Chicago Fire, they cannot afford to lose this game because if they lose this game, I think that old narrative is started to come again. Where they had a great run in the summer month, but once the leaves turns to fall, and once we get to the stretch, this is where we see the Fire has imploded. We saw it last season, and it feels like it could be again if they don't get a win in this one against the Vancouver Whitecaps. But that being said, I am now going to switch boards and look at the last 5 games to finish off the midweek action of match week number 29. So moving on, we got the Houston Dynamo versus the Columbus Crew, and I gotta say, this is a very underrated matchup. I mean, out of all these good matchup in terms of the midweek games, and there are definitely some very interesting matchup. I think this is definitely one of the more underrated one, and people don't know that this could be a really good game. And that, of course, is the Houston Dynamo versus the Columbus Crew. Now, Houston 10-5-10, while the Crew is 12-6-7, and in terms of the all-time meetings, 7-11-8 in favor of the Columbus Crew. But in the last 5 head-to-head matchup, with a 1-1 draw between both of these teams before Houston did win 2-0 against Columbus. Columbus did win 1-0 against Houston, Houston winning 3-1 against Columbus, and Columbus winning 1-0 against the Houston Dynamo. And I would also like to say that both of these teams are kind of similar in terms of how they operate this season, where they tend to always win their home games. But when it comes to their road form, that has been a problem. Though you say that, and the Houston Dynamo just got their second win this season on the road and probably played one of the best road games that they played in years against RSL. So yeah, obviously when you have that happen, the home team is definitely going to be favorites, and especially with the fact that with the way I'm going to be interesting to see how Wilfred Nancy is going to approach this game. I mean, yes, he's going to try to do what he usually do, which is he's not going to be afraid to go on the attacking end and be the protagonist. When you're facing against this Dynamo team that has that notion to trying to hit teams on the transition and have done a great job in terms of that, yeah, that might be actually playing in the hands of the Houston Dynamo. So again, I'm interested to see how Wilfred Nancy approach is going to be, but also most importantly, because of the Crew has been struggling this season on the road, this could be a chance for that narrative to turn. Though that being said, Houston has been so good this season at home, and you could say that this game, despite Columbus being relatively hot in the last two games, this could be a game that Houston could have an edge over them. With that being said, moving on is to the game that I'm going to, which is Minnesota versus the Colorado Rapids. So surely this has to be a home win. I mean, I know this team have only won twice this season at home, but surely has to be a third one with the way that Minnesota they have a record of 8 wins, 8 draw, and 8 losses, while Colorado have a free 10-11 record. And keep in mind, Colorado only won twice this season on the row. And really, this is a game between two of the worst teams in terms of playing at home. Only Colorado has a worse home record than what Minnesota has had this season. And in terms of the all-time meeting, it's relatively close. 7 wins apiece with 2 draw. And on the last 5 head-to-head matchup, Minnesota did win against Colorado earlier this season. In fact, I think that was like their first win that they had against the Colorado Rapids on the road with a 2-1 win. Then it was a 4-3 win that the Rapids had against Minnesota before Minnesota did win 3-1 against Colorado. Then Colorado got a rare win at Allianz Field. In fact, I think that's the first win that they had against Minnesota at Allianz Field with a 3-1 road win before Colorado did win 2-0 against Minnesota. But again, that was a complete different Minnesota team and a complete different Colorado team that we're talking about right now. This is a team that, like what I said about TFC, they're just playing out the string, but they're definitely playing hard. I can say that, as much as this is a game that I think the Loons should win, they can't take this game lightly because they know that this season they have been having problems at home. And I'm also really hoping that Adrian Heath will be more positive in this game. He cannot simply put midfielders as a winger too, like he did against Seattle. He has to go for it in this game against a Rapids team that, again, they're just playing out of the string, and that this is one that I think Minnesota surely has to win, because if they don't win this one, I don't think they deserve playoffs. Consider if you don't beat the worst team in the league at home, yeah, playoffs probably shouldn't be for you. But that being said, moving on, we got St. Louis versus FC Dallas. So the last time both of these teams faced against each other, it took 2 days for the game to complete. I mean, well, actually, it didn't take 2 days to complete. It actually took a month to complete, because I forgot that there's been a couple of games that it has taken a day to complete, and the very next day this game took a long time to complete, and by the time it was complete, Dallas was able to be victorious after the game. But now it's going to be tougher now, because they have to go on the road in this one, with Dallas having a 9-6-9 record, while St. Louis 14-2-9. And there's no doubt that St. Louis wants some revenge after the 2-0 loss that they suffer earlier this season. And also, they definitely wants to make amends of the road loss that they had against Orlando City. So yeah, again, this is gonna be a game that St. Louis is gonna be up for it. The crowd is gonna be up for it. I mean, this season St. Louis has been really good at home. This has been a team, as you expect, in that home at playing at City Park in front of that hostile environment. They have been able to have a lot to cheer about, but against a Dallas team this season that, again, this is a team that still struggled to score goals. And when you face against a St. Louis team that has the knack of scoring a lot of goals in a short amount of time, yeah, that's not a recipe for success if Dallas does find themselves down. In fact, I would say if Dallas does find themselves like 1 or 2 nil down, this game probably would be all over, and St. Louis should easily rush to get all 3 points again and get themselves back to why they're considered to be a top dog in the Western Conference, sitting first place in the West. Then we get to the next match, which is the Portland Timbers versus RSL, and this is the two West Coast, or one of the two West Coast games, the other being the Cali Classico between the San Jose Earthquakes and the LA Galaxy. But this one, I would say, this is kind of a desperation derby, and maybe the truest desperation derby out of all the game, because here you got the Portland Timbers barely hanging on to their playoff hope against an RSL team that is heading the wrong direction. I mean, they are a team that has just really imploded in these last couple of games that they play, and their stock has definitely been dropping because of it. But they do still have a 10-7-8 record, and they're actually still sitting pretty well in the standing. They're sitting in fourth position, while the Timbers, of course, I think they're sitting in a 12th position right now with 6-8-11 record. RSL does have the edge over Portland, but barely, with a 15-10 and 13 record over the Timbers. And the last 5 head-to-head matchup was a 0-0 draw between both of these teams last time they faced against each other, before RSL did win 3-1 against the Timbers. Then it was another 0-0 draw, followed by a 2-0 win the Timbers had against RSL, and then the Timbers were able to go on the road and win 3-1 against RSL. So, like I said, both of these teams are desperate to trying to get 3 points, and for different reasons too. For RSL, just kind of ride the ship and trying to realize that Pablo Ruiz isn't the reason why it's holding the glue of this team being as incredible as they were before the Leeds Cup tournament, and even doing the Leeds Cup tournament itself. And then the Portland Timbers, again, they need to win at home. Like the fact that once again they're having problems to win at home this season. Well, it's not a big surprise because they haven't really been playing well at all, both home and away. And if they want to keep their playoff chances, and I also know that they do have that Cascadia derby, and I know it's easy for them to look forward to that game. But this is a game that they need to kickstart in terms of trying to build some momentum and potentially win that Cascadia Derby. Because I'm going to still say it. That Cascadia Derby, just like last season, could determine the fate of both of those teams in the playoffs. If the team that won that Cascadia Derby, they're probably going to go on a run. The loser is probably going to continue a miserable run, as I said about the Seattle Sounders too. Despite being sitting in third place in the standings, yeah, I mean they have not won a game. I think they haven't won a game in like 6 or 7 matches, and it's crazy to say the Sounders have gone for that much of a winless run. Consider you never see that happen with that team. But that being said, moving on into the last match of this match weekend, to save the best for last, we got the Cali Clasico between the San Jose Earthquakes versus the LA Galaxy. Because who didn't like the Cali Clasico? Who said the Cali Clasico is dead? I definitely don't. Because coming into this game, the Quakes 9-8-8, while the Galaxy 6-7-10. Now, in terms of the all-time meeting, the Galaxy does have a 42-18-33 in favor of the Quakes. And really, in the last 5 head-to-head matchup, the Cali Clasico has really been in favor of the Galaxy. I mean, I remember the Quakes have done really well in this derby back in 2019 and 2020, but recently it's been streamed back to the Galaxy favorite, because after it was a 2-2 draw earlier in the Cali Clasico at Stanford Stadium, the Galaxy did win 2-1 against the Quakes. Then it was a 3-2 road win that the Galaxy had against the Quakes, a 2-1 road win that the Quakes had against the Galaxy. But then the Quakes lost 3-1 at home against the LA Galaxy. And knowing the fact that this is an LA Galaxy team that is definitely different than the LA Galaxy that the Quakes faced back at Stanford Stadium, the Quakes got to be careful, because they can't afford to draw points in this one. And especially, I know they had a bad night in that game against Sporting KC, but this is a chance where they can make up for it, and especially with how they are considered one of the best, if not the best team this season at home. They've only lost once this season at home. You would assume that they should get points out of this game, and probably 3 points out of this game too, because where they are sitting in the standings, like what I said, with a lot of these Western Conference teams that is above the red line. I mean, unless you're not named St. Louis or LAFC, you're probably sweating in terms of where you are in the standings, and also even some of the teams that's below the red line, where it's not done yet. I mean, there's still a chance that the season is not over, and that's what the Galaxy are thinking, trying to make a late push to try and get themselves above the red line. But there you have it. That is pretty much it for the preview of all of these games. Like I said, I have no idea how I'm gonna watch all of these games, but I'll make sure I'll try my best to do so, and I'll probably do the review not on Wednesday night, because I think I had to do something later on Wednesday, but probably on Thursday when I do the review of these games. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys like, smash the subscribe button. Let me know in the comments below what do you think of these 13 games. And as always, let me know in the comments below your prediction for all 13 of these games. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys like, smash the subscribe button. And yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.